Penny Hardaway's Tigers went to Philadelphia last night. They played some Owls. You know how that usually goes. Final score, Temple 88, Memphis 81. So the Tigers are now 2-3 against Owls over the past 2 seasons. Our nightmare continues.
Yeah.
Big Bet Bennett, disappointing loss on the road. On a scale of 1 to 7, how disappointed were you in your home last night watching that nonsense?
1 to 7. I put that one at about a 5.
I think that's a reasonable number.
I put that one at about a 5. I'm not like, I don't think by any means it's like a season wrecking loss. It's a quad 2 loss, right, on the road. So
that's right.
It doesn't hurt you tremendously. I think just like I heard CJ say this on their show this morning, and it did make me be like, oh God. It was literally this time last year that everything fell apart. Like literally almost exactly to the date when everything just fell apart and they lost 4 in a row in conference and the season was completely wrecked at that point. I don't think that will happen this season, but I do think taking that loss last night makes Sunday's game at Charlotte just so much. Like, you can't lose that game. I mean, that's a terrible team you're playing on Sunday. You lose that one, that's 2 straight losses in a bad conference. Then we're talking about, oh boy, is this thing about to take a really bad turn. Here, again, they didn't play well last night. Like, I just the rebounding was horrible last night. PJ Haggerty missed a bunch of free throws down the stretch, which I think that's just it's part of the Memphis curse, but it's also probably just an anomaly. Like, he's been a good free throw shooter. So, disappointing, but I'm not like in panic mode by any means right now.
I totally get why Memphis fans are like, oh my God, or is this a here we go again thing? Because it's a lot like every time a Grizzly rolls an ankle or Ja's foot sore.
Here we go.
Grizzlies fans are like, here we go again,
yep.
right? It's PTSD. I don't know if it's like the textbook definition of it. Y'all can look it up on your own, but you know what I mean.
Yep.
It's PTSD. If you're a Grizzlies fan, every time somebody gets hurt, oh my God, here we go again. Even we have fun with it. If you're a Tigers fan, every time you got free throw issues, it's here we go again. And more recently, when you start losing AAC games that you're supposed to win after winning non-league games that you weren't supposed to win, people wonder, are you going to spiral the way you did last season? Because just to put some specifics on it, on January 10th last season, they were ranked in the top 10 in the AP poll, and from there, they just lost again and again and again and again. And by the time the season was over, they weren't sniffing the NCAA tournament. Penny Hardaway was asked about this last night, and evidence that this is still something that is on the minds of Tiger fans and Tiger beat writers is that Penny Hardaway was asked about it last night. I bet you, even though Michigan is also a nationally ranked team that lost a road game to an unranked team last night, I bet you Dusty May was not asked if he was concerned if this is, deja vu all over again. And even though Gonzaga, and we'll get to this next, lost a road game to an unranked team last night while the Zags were ranked 16th in the country, I bet you Mark Few wasn't asked if he's concerned if this is, deja vu all over again. But Penny Hardaway had to answer that question because Memphis fans dealt with what Memphis fans had to deal with just last season. It was perhaps among notable teams the biggest collapse in the country. When Penny was asked about it last night, you know what he said? I'm not worried yet. And I would agree with it. I would co-sign that. I would retweet that. I'm not worried yet. As someone who wants Memphis basketball to be good and get a high seed in the NCAA tournament and advance deep in the bracket, and man, wouldn't it be something if they won the whole thing? I'm not worried yet either. I think they'll be fine. I did not drop Memphis very far in the top 25-1. I had Memphis 14th on Thursday morning. I've got the Tigers 17th right now. Again, there were 3 ranked teams that played basketball games last night. All 3 of them played unranked teams on the road. All 3 of them lost. This wasn't just a Memphis thing last night. It was also a Gonzaga thing. It was also a Michigan thing. And Memphis, even with last night's loss, because like you accurately pointed out, it was quad 2, Memphis is 5-2 in quadrant 1, 4-1 quadrant 2, 9-3 in the first 2 quadrants. They've still got the quadrant 3 loss to Arkansas State. That's always going to be there to bother you, but that's still a totally rankable body of work. I know these losses feel big, and they are on some level, particularly if they pile up. But the deeper you get into a season, these things matter less because there are more data points. You know, there's like last night was just one data point in a 17-game season. If one data point in a 4-game season, in an 8-game season, matters more than it matters now. So a loss like this a month ago might have dropped you more significantly. But based on the way I do it, at least, I didn't drop Memphis very far at all, and I think Memphis only dropped a handful of spots in the net as well. I've got Memphis 14th in the top 25 and 1 yesterday, 17th in the top 25 and 1 today.
You know, one thing that I want to see on Sunday at Charlotte, if there is any real concern, because they can still put up points. I mean, they scored in the 80s last night again in the loss, and they didn't even play that well. I would like again, you're playing a bad team on Sunday on the road. Like, let's see that defensive intensity come back for them. Like, let's get the rebounding numbers back up, block shots, steals. Like, that's what I want to see, because that's kind of been the identity of this team a little bit. Like, they were a good defensive team earlier on in the season. I want to see that, because that, you know, you could, in theory, probably beat that team. Even if you had a bad offensive game, just show that defense that you did in parts of this season, and you should still be able to get a win on Sunday.
I think they'll bounce back, win on Sunday, remain in the AP poll on Monday. I think last night felt bad and disappointing. A, because it was bad and disappointing, but B, because this is a fan base that was just sitting around waiting on something to feel bad and disappointing. Like, because it's never too far away. It's always right around the corner. At least it feels that way.
That's right.
And last night was the latest example of that. So I get the reaction. I'll side with Penny here. He said he's not worried yet. I also not worried yet. But these numbers are weird. I looked it up last night and then double checked it. Just because I bet you cannot find another team in the country whose records under the set of circumstances I'm going to lay out is similar to what Memphis's record is under these set of circumstances. Over the past 2 seasons, Memphis has played 17 games against power conference schools, what we would consider power conference schools in college basketball, and that would be the Power 4, SEC, Big 10, ACC, Big 12, plus the Big East. The 5 power conferences. There are 5 power conferences in basketball, 4 power conferences in football. 5 in basketball, the Power 4, plus the Big East. Over the past 2 seasons, Memphis has played 17 games against schools like that. The record's 13-4. Memphis is 13-4 the past 2 seasons against power conference teams. Meantime, in that same span of time, Memphis is 14-9 in games against AAC opponents. The power conferences are way better than the AAC.
Mm-hmm.
And yet Memphis's record against power conference opponents over the past 2 years is way better than it is against AAC opponents. That's a mental thing. That's a focus thing.
I think you're right.
That's an
I think you're right.
thing. And so that is something that, on one hand, I can say I side with Penny Hardaway here. I'm not worried yet. But on the other hand, this is something that Penny Hardaway and his staff need to address and have to figure out, because that makes no sense. That would be like if you were looking at an NBA team and they beat all the best teams and then lost to all the bad teams. That's what Memphis is doing. They're beating the Celtics and the Thunder and the Cavs, and then turning right around and losing to the Nets. Right? I mean, that's what's happening. And so 13-4 against power conference teams, 14-9 against AAC teams the past 2 years. That is a weird record. I hope we don't have to keep updating that in a negative way, because if we do, then we'll be having all the same conversations we were having throughout the end of January and February and early March last season. I'm not worried yet. I agree with Penny Hardaway, but let's circle back on Monday and see where we're at.
The Gary Parrish Show, live weekdays at 10 a.m.